Welcome everyone to today's ordinary council meeting. I am the Mayor, Councillor Georgina Papafodio. I declare this meeting open at 2 p.m. This meeting is a continuation of our ordinary council meeting last night. That meeting was adjourned because of the number of items on our agenda and the fact that we ran out of time last night to deal with all of those items. There are 6 substantive items left for consideration by Council today. I would like to extend a warm welcome to members of the public who are viewing at home. Due to the declaration of state of disaster in Victoria and introduction of stage 4 restrictions, councillors will be attending this meeting electronically. This meeting is being streamed live through Council's website and a recording of the meeting will be published on Council's website. The application used to live stream this meeting requires details on registration. However, these details are hidden from all other attendees at the meeting. Members of the public will not be recorded in this process and Brimbank City Council does not record this information. Item 1, opening. Please stand for the acknowledgement of country. On behalf of Brimbank City Council, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Wurundjeri people, and pay our respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. I ask councillors to remain standing for the council commitment. Others may be seated. As a council, we will act in the best interests of the Brimbank community and consider the immediate and long-term impacts of our decisions. We will make these decisions fairly and without bias. We will uphold all of our obligations under the laws of Victoria and Council's local laws and will act in accordance with our Councillor Code of Conduct. Thank you. You may be seated. Item 3, apologies. I note that Councillor Tarkos, Councillor Allen and Councillor Trung are an apology from this meeting. Item 4, disclosure of conflicts of interest. Councillors, are there any conflicts of interest? Thank you. Councillors, you will recall that we were up to item 13 in our agenda, notices of motion. The next notice of motion is from Councillor Heddich. 13.4, bulk grain store buildings in Sunshine. Councillor Heddich, would you like to move your motion?
I would, Madam Mayor. I move the motion that's on the business papers. It's a relatively long one, so I'm happy to have that put on the screen and then have someone second if they wish.
So could the host share that? Thank you. We'll just give people some time to read it. Thank you, host. Could you thank you. Okay, do I have a seconder for this notice of motion? Councillor Borg. Councillor Heddich, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Lancashire. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. I had some questions and I wouldn't mind asking them probably before Councillor Heddich speaks on the application, if that's okay.
Is this to a director?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. So, Councillor Heddich, sorry about that.
Okay.
Is this for Mr. Walsh?
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Lancashire.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and to the Director, Colin Walsh. I understand we haven't been briefed on this, so I understand that that there is a delay on collecting information. If you could explain that, and also it is normal practice with these type of things to keep the matters confidential. Could you explain why we would want to do that? Also, in terms of...
Councillor Lancashire, do you want to allow Mr Walsh to answer those questions first?
Madam Mayor, I was just seeking clarification. I was under the impression we may be limited to the number of questions, so I was wrapping them all together. But if I've got 4 questions, if I'm allowed to ask all 4, I'll ask them individually, if that's okay.
So, okay. So, sorry, what was the first question, and Mr Walsh can answer it?
Just simply that there is a delay in collecting the information for this matter, if that could be explained, please.
So council officers have commenced a preliminary assessment of the heritage values of the grain store. As part of that work, we look at public records to establish some of the history of the site. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, the Public Record Office is currently closed, precluding us from accessing some records associated with the grain stores.
Thank you. The next question relates to, with these things, sometimes because of the potential for an interim control, the matter may not be or may be considered confidential. Is that correct? If you could explain that. And also, are there any concerns in making this public, this proposal public?
How can I best, through you, Madam Mayor, the undertaking of preliminary work by council is often done prior to making it public. We do a whole lot of work before it is put into the public domain. In terms of heritage investigations, there are no, to the best of my knowledge, no legislative requirements around maintaining confidentiality or otherwise in relation to undertaking preliminary heritage investigations.
Thank you, Mr Walsh. Councillor Lancashire, I've just received information from governance. We did say yesterday that there wouldn't be more than 2 questions per councillor. So that's your second question. Councillor Goodachare.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also have a question to Director Walsh through you. I note in the officer advice that it is not supported to go ahead with this motion simply because by making it public in this way, it may actually expedite the demolition of the silos, which then would really be detrimental should we have wished to pursue an interim heritage overlay. Is that quite right, Mr Walsh?
That is correct. Through you, Madam Mayor, that is correct, Councillor Giudice. That is the advice that I provided.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, are there any other questions or points of clarification? Councillor Aziz? We can't hear you.
I move that this motion be now put.
Do I have a seconder? Sorry, Councillor Hedditch, I can't hear you.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Point of order. I have a question also as a result of the answer that Mr Walsh has given that actually will provide more clarity around the may expedite demolition comment. There is also a whole lot of work going on in the council offices. If that order came in, it would be dealt with immediately to the minister. There's another answer that needs to be given to councillors before put motions are put. This is unfair, very unfair.
Councillor Hedditch, thank you. I will allow that.
This is organised factionalism.
No. Councillor Hedditch, I'm allowing your question to be answered by Mr Walsh.
So,
all right, so could you please ask your question again?
Director Walsh, in our conversations, I asked you the question around if a demolition order was provided to the council as a result of an immediate demolition order as a result of the process closing on the 27th of August, would council be able to expedite it immediately? And you said yes. The trouble is council can't make it, as my understanding is, the council can't make a decision on this until next council meeting unless something extraordinary is called, which is well beyond when the EOI process concludes. So my question is, if a demolition request came in, council may be able to expedite it immediately, taking away all these fears that councillors are raising at the moment.
Through you, Madam Mayor, what council officers would expedite is a request to the Minister for Planning to introduce interim controls, interim heritage controls, and that would be based on the information that we have today collected as part of our preliminary heritage assessment.
Okay, Councillor Hedditch, you can ask one more question.
Thank you. In point D of the notice of motion, Director Walsh, there's a point that councillor writes to the Minister for Planning advising that the investigation is stalled due to COVID impacts and there's an inability to access the records. In that case, it is a reasonable thing to do, is it not, to actually make this open and transparent to both the person who's selling the site and that the community itself, that this work is going on and there is a possibility of this happening. It's an open and transparent mechanism then that everyone knows before someone buys the site and before the community, the community that's affected here that do want to see a retention of these silos for heritage reasons, can have their say as well.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Hedditch, with all due respect, this is your notice of motion. I have not formed a view on the reasonableness or otherwise of the motion. I've provided advice to council about the officer's preferred direction in relation to dealing with this matter, and in providing you and council with that advice, I detailed the officer's views on risk of ventilating this in the public domain prior to completing the heritage assessment versus enabling the officers to complete the full assessment once COVID-19 restrictions are listed.
But we have no timelines.
Thank you, Councillor Hedditch. Your question has been answered. Okay. All right, councillors. Are there any other councillors? Councillor Farn?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would want to ask that because at this stage of the COVID restriction is preventing council from accessing the public record based on what the answer on the public question. So if we gonna go and do that, are there any estimate time if we can get the answer back from the authority that
And Councillor Farn, before you continue, there's something wrong with the audio. Have you got something else on as well?
No.
Okay, is anyone else hearing something in the background? Yeah. Yeah, so you'll need to turn off you've got something else on. We'll ask Mr. Walsh to answer your question in the meantime. Can you just put yourself on mute, please? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, unfortunately, I am unable to provide councillors with an estimate on the timeframes due to the decisions of the state government in terms of lifting restrictions.
Okay. Any other councillors? Councillor David.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question to Director Walsh. If he requests a demolition order, Madam Mayor, how long it take for council to answer back, and what's thereafter?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. The last part of the question dropped out.
Councillor David, could you please repeat that question?
If if the ownership requested a demolition order and it has to come through council, I presume, how long does it take for them to get a permit to go ahead and demolish?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there are no planning requirements on the site in relation to demolition control. If someone were wanting to demolish the building, they would need to get a building permit. As part of that process, council officers would receive an inquiry concerning any other controls on the site. That would then, we would then be alerted to imminent consideration of demolition of the building. And at that point, the officers would provide council with advice on options of whether they would like to proceed in seeking from the Minister interim controls for the building and the site.
Okay. Any other questions or points of clarification, councillors? Okay, thank you for that. All right, Councillor Hedditch. Councillor Hedditch, we can't hear you.
Sorry.
Right, so we're going back, councillors, to Councillor Hedditch speaking to the motion at this stage.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all the questions. I think they're really valid ones, and it is a vexed question about how to do this best. So I'll explain why I'm putting forward this notice of motion, that the council notes that the process is stalled, that we can't access historical records, and there is no timeline to do that. There is a timeline on the expression of interest process that the owner, GrainCorp, has at the moment. That concludes on the 27th of August. The next council meeting isn't until September. There is a possibility of a quick sale and a demolition order coming in. And there is, I think, a risk in all of that for everyone. So the point I'd make is that by having this matter dealt with as a notice of motion, and after a conversation with Katie Hall, the local MP's office, who were requesting that council provide advice and they would provide a letter of support to the Minister on this, and other MPs likely to too, that council process something that enables them to do that, given the timelines that there are for sale at the moment. An expression of interest process could be concluded in a week or so, and a sale made and a demolition order come in. And so the point of this notice of motion is to identify that the process is stalled for some unknown time of developing an assessment of whether a heritage application is valid or not, and that there are risks in terms of possible demolition occurring should a letter not be sent to the Minister as requested here in D of this notice of motion, that we write to the council writes to the Minister advising that the preliminary heritage investigation on interim or permanent heritage overlay is currently stalled, and an inability to access the Public Records Office, so that the Minister can consider an intervention himself while this process finishes. It's not about, proactively starting demolition of the place. It's about proactively having the Minister aware that the process is stalled, and that the Minister's office can consider the right moves in terms of this going forward, given that there is a large community out here that highly values the silo site and does want to see it protected under heritage values. There are others who don't, and that's acknowledged. But I think the whole purpose of this particular notice of motion is to identify the risks of not taking this action immediately and letting the Minister know, and not taking this action and letting the local MPs know, that so that they can also write letters of support to the Minister, asking him to consider the best possible option going forward, noting that this process is stalled at council and has no timeline for conclusion. In terms of delay, I think that delay is what's caused all of this, that we cannot, there is no certainty around what might happen or not happen with the silos unless we do something as a council. And that's our role. The Minister's been saying openly that council should take action on these heritage matters. It's in their bailiwick. And what this notice of motion does is say to council, well, let's do the right thing here, given the stalled process, given that we have no certainty around when it might conclude and when something might come to council, and given that council is the place where decisions get made and there won't be a decision made until next council meeting, and there could be a possible sale and demolition order in on the council very quickly, irrespective of this.
Thank you,
I'll
Councillor
leave it at that. I
Hedditch.
recommend the notice of motion to the councillors as the best option now and the most acceptable option to community, and local, and I'll leave it at that as to community. And it's also, I think, an open and transparent thing on behalf of providing information to GrainCorp about what council's thinking and doing.
Thank you, Councillor Hedditch. Okay, just reset that. Okay, Councillor Borg, would you like to speak to this motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to this motion? Councillor Farm?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have done a bit of searching on the internet, and I saw on the silo12.com.au, the Sunshine Victoria silo is actually come up at one of, can be say, the heritage building. And also last year, you remember, we have the silo projection project, which the Brimbank City Council was a project partner in doing the projections project on the silo. So originally that project, people wanted to pen on it, but didn't have the permission from the owner. But then the owner agreed to have the projection on that silo, and that event was quite successful. If councillor remember that. So I thought I hear both of the expression from councillor, but I think it actually have quite significant value to this building. Also, I have visited the grassland reserve. I can't remember exactly the name. Very close by to the silo, and I think a lot of time people visiting that grassland reserve and would want to see this silo being there as well. So that's my little shirt on the internet, and also remembering the past project, and that's what I can see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farm. And Councillor Farm, could you please check, because your audio, there's some background noise. You need to switch something off at home.
I haven't got anything on, Mayor. I don't know why. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor David?
Madam Mayor, through you, I just wonder if I can ask a question to Councillor Hedditch, please.
All right,
Yes.
I'll allow a question.
Just a very simple question it is. Councillor Hedditch, I believe the silos are up for sale. And are they selling it as an investment? What is the sign saying, or what actually selling it for an investment?
It's an expression of interest for a sale. Yeah, so it's seeking offers from interested parties. It's a commercially zoned site.
I just wonder what they're going to build there if they demolish the silos. I don't know. Maybe they just build into the silos. I don't know.
There is a risk of demolition, as I understand it, from people who are advising me who have expertise in this area. They say that there's a real risk of it, and I think the process is finishing on the 27th of August, Councillor Davis. The expression of interest process. So parties will have their bids in by then, and then there'll be an acceptance of them or not. It'll be over very quickly.
Councillors, thank you. Is there any other councillor that would like to speak to this motion? Councillor Goodichere?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I find this motion extremely baffling, to tell you the truth. The expressions of interest are finishing on the 27th of August. Today's the 19th of August. What could this possibly achieve? Our preliminary studies haven't shown whether it's should be or shouldn't be. Our preliminary studies are certainly not going to find whether we should or shouldn't be. By the time we send a letter, it'll be the end of the week if this motion is accepted. Mr. Wynne will probably not receive it before the expressions of interest are finished. So I'm not quite sure what message we're sending out there. A demolition order could come in at any time. They could demolish it regardless. We had, when we were first elected to council, we had that group from Canley who demolished a pub in the city, remember? What happened to them? Nothing much. So if a developer is willing to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars buying it, they may want to also risk millions of dollars of fines in actually demolishing it. So I think by alluding it out there, I'm not sure. I don't have enough information about it, Councillor Heddich. You had not briefed the council in time. We don't have enough information about it. And today's certainly not the day to be getting a briefing on this issue either. So I'm sorry, I will not be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Goodchair. Any other councillors that would like to make a comment to this motion? Okay, Councillor Heddich, you've got a right of reply. We can't hear you, Councillor Heddich.
Sorry, I hear the comments of Councillor Goodchair, and I think they demonstrate very clearly why we should be proceeding with this. There are risks, real risks, and by not advising the Minister that we have a stalled process and that there is an expression of interest process concluding on the 27th of August, and that there are wide community concerns about the possibility of demolition. The whole point is that the council, which is what the Minister has called on councils to do when these sort of heritage issues are around, is to make decisions in their own bailiwick that deal with things effectively. This notice of motion does that. It puts the information on the Minister's desk very quickly before a whole series of preemptive approaches could happen, and says there's a real issue here. I think it's a very valid notice of motion, that it has all the benefits of openness, transparency, proactive, and benefits for all, a win-win for the seller, a win-win for the community potentially, and a win-win for the council, in that it is dealing with the issue in a timely way now. It makes no difference to a whole range of, I guess, possible options. It just says up front, we're in the process of doing an interim assessment, of whether a heritage application should be made. We can't finish that process.
You've got 30 seconds, Councillor Heddich.
And until we finish that process, we need to let you know that there are risks, and can you please make your interventions? And we also ask the local members to support it, because they will.
Thank you. All right, councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Okay, so it's lost, Councillor Heddich. Thank you. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Division, Madam Mayor.
Okay. All those in favour, hands up, please. All those in favour? All right, so Councillor Heddich, Councillor Dwin Farm, and Councillor David, is that up or down? Down. All right. So all those in favour, we've got Councillor Heddich and Councillor Farm. Thank you. All those against, hands up, please. Councillor Borg, Councillor Aziz, Councillor David, Councillor Goodchair, Councillor Lancashire, and Councillor Papafodio. Thank you. Okay. We go on to item 13.5, separate Brimbank Municipal Public Health and Wellbeing Plan. Councillor Heddich, would you like to move your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My notice of motion is as per the business papers. It seeks council to meet with DHHS to discuss the future COVID pandemic impacts and outcomes on Brimbank and the future health and wellbeing planning options. It seeks state and federal government resourcing and support for local primary prevention and other interventions to assist with the community-wide recovery. And it seeks an officer report to council on the benefits of a separate Brimbank public health and wellbeing plan, aligned closely with its council plan to assist in dealing with the COVID-19 health and wellbeing impacts and outcomes.
Thank you, Councillor Hedditch. Do I have a seconder for this motion? No one. Okay, Councillor Hedditch, that means this lapses. It's lost. Thank you. We'll go to the next item, 13.6, Sunshine Leisure Strategic Assessment Report. Councillor Hedditch, would you like to move your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This particular item, the Sunshine Leisure Strategic Assessment Report, calls on council to acknowledge the highly valued spirit of community partnership and engagement that has occurred with the local community over the past 8 years during the Sunshine Leisure Centre review and the recent master planning processes regarding potential future facility enhancements. It asks the council to prepare and publish a clear and concise community-facing report on the key findings and recommendations of the recently concluded Sunshine Leisure Centre strategic assessment process. And it seeks community and local, state and federal MPs' feedback on the community-facing report.
Thank you, Councillor Hedditch. Do I have a seconder for this motion? Councillor Farm, thank you. Councillor Hedditch, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors will recall that this was an item that I raised through a rescission motion, and that is an item that after discussions with the officers, I have subsequently put forward as a notice of motion. The reason I'm putting it forward is that when council decided to do the strategic assessment back in August last year, it moved at that council meeting in section H that it go back to community to prepare the strategic assessment and involve the community in that process. The matter came to council recently, and council decided that it would accept the strategic assessment, but it was under confidentiality provisions for reasons, and that the community, and one thing that happened in that process was the report also identified the community hadn't been involved in developing the assessment and hadn't been involved in the process. So I put my rescission motion forward on that basis, that it hadn't met those requirements. I was going to put it forward that way. But in subsequent conversations, we've come to the point where it's possible to produce a community-facing report, a version from the strategic assessment that the community can see that takes out all those confidential issues that were included in the original report that went to council and it accepted. So this notice of motion asks that we value that highly, that amount of community partnership and spirit that's been around this whole Sunshine Leisure Centre process for many, many years after all the hassles we had previously. And that we continue that, that spirit of engagement and partnership by preparing and publishing a clear and concise community-facing report on the key findings and recommendations, suitably de-identified so that those commercial aspects are not there on the recently concluded strategic assessment. And there are a number of things in that, that strategic assessment that the community can have a say on, and the council officers believe that a report like this with that sort of community-facing focus and the ability for the community to have a say would deal with that ongoing desire to retain the, I guess, spirit of partnership and the value of having that community working with council on the future of this place. It will be a long time relationship. There's a lot of work still to do. We acknowledge that. There's no money in capital works programs, but the problems, the problems are best solved working together on this. So a community-facing report that enables the community to have a say is what's recommended here. And that we also seek community and local, state and federal MPs' feedback on this community-facing report so that it better informs the planning and development of the Leisure Centre going forward over the coming years, because there will be many years before anything happens there. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Farm, would you like to speak to this motion?
No, thanks, Madam Mayor. I think it's all well said by Councillor Haddish. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Farm. Are there any other councillors that would like to speak to this motion? Okay, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Right.
Division, Madam Mayor.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favour, please put your hands up again. Councillor Hedich, Councillor Goodachie, Councillor David, Councillor Ball, Councillor Aziz and Councillor Farm. All those against? Councillor Lancashire and Councillor Papafodio. Thank you. All right, item 14.1, report on streetscapes to the new 2020 council. Councillor Hedich, would you like to talk to this, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this matter was brought to Council last meeting by Councillor Tarkos on my behalf when I was away sick. This particular notice of particular rescission motion is put forward as I believe that councillors did not have a clear enough understanding of what the intent of my notice of motion was, that it was misunderstood and that there were a number of comments made that do not reflect the whole rationale behind what I was proposing. So I beg the councillors' time on this. So I move the motion as per the papers. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, okay.
Apologies.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Farm. Okay, Councillor Hedich.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, I put this notice of motion forward last meeting through Councillor Tarkos, and thank her for that. It, I believe, was misunderstood, and the decision was taken not understanding the extent of work that I saw being required here. So I'll explain briefly. This particular notice of motion relies on a streetscape report, and a streetscape is a term that refers to and is used to describe the natural and built fabric of a street, and it's also defined as the design quality and the visual effect that it has. The streetscape concept recognises that a street is generally a public place where people are able to engage in various activities. And we know that at this point in time, with COVID-19 impacting this community in the way it is, that the street has become the focus of many, many people, much more than it has been in the past. And that's the whole reason this particular piece of notice of motion was put forward, so that we take a stronger focus on it over the next couple of years, and we do some interim work and some longer term work, which I notice is happening through the Creating Better Streets strategy, which takes 2 years. But this was more about getting our head around what we can do now with what we've got and what we might be able to do in the future, and separating out the short from the medium term. So my notice of motion called on an aligned suite of a holistic approach to street, thinking about it in a whole way around both the built fabric and the natural environment that's in the street, and thinking about how we might have an aligned suite of, policies, guidelines and plans in the future, and that we might consider things like landscape and architectural design guidelines that we saw were much needed last night when we processed the Sun Crescent application. And we might have those sort of guidelines in place like they do in the ACT, and how it's created much value and benefit there for investors, for the public and community and various others. And that we consider that as part of a report that goes to council, just a report. I should say up front that this is a report. It's not a finished work. It's a report on what might be possible in an aligned suite. If you set out the 6 or 7 things that you might focus on in the street, like landscape and architectural design guidelines for an activity centre or an industrial zone. Like local laws, we've heard since from the officers that the local laws do have a 10-year review period and that we can't do much there, but that's advice that can go to a council, in a council report in February, that there is limited possibility of doing things, but here's some areas that we think need to be thought about going forward. There may be some more work is needed before the 10 years is up, but a report that identifies the really key issues that are being identified by a community as problems with local laws now. So a report that has that aspect to it, that's one of the alignment parts. Another one is about a compliance resources plan. We know that there are a lot of complaints coming in to councillors and others about things happening in streets that aren't being dealt with quickly and that they're causing people distress, litter, cars, all sorts of different problems in the street. And this is about identifying what sort of resources are in place at present and what could be put together in future in a report to council in February. Without a lot of effort in that, we don't want the streets deteriorating for another couple of years. It's about saying, this is where we stand now, this is what the possible options are in a very basic council report. The next point was around, that I made was around a quality service plan, where council officers can develop, and they're saying they can, develop a plan readily that identifies, like we do for the garbage collection, that it comes every week, and these are the bins that are collected. We have something else that tells us when street sweeping occurs or any other council function happens, and we have that identified in a service plan that the community has.
30 seconds, Councillor Hedditch.
There you go, 30 seconds. Yeah.
30 seconds.
We have streetscape policy connections, and we also have something we can put to them on what's happening around footpaths, bike and walking paths, and things that we might be able to do in the coming year or two that that improve that. And one of the things last night I put forward was to increase the budget in those areas. A report to council on those matters is not a big task. It doesn't require a lot of resourcing, can complement the creating better.
Thank you, Councillor Hedditch. Your time is up. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Farm, would you like to speak to this report?
I think it's all explained very clear by Councillor Hedditch of what his intention is for this rescission motion, so I wouldn't say anything extra.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, anyone else that would like to make a comment on this notice of motion? Oh, sorry, the rescission. Yes. No, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Okay. Item 15. Yes.
Division, Madam Mayor.
Okay, we've got a division again. So all those in favour, hands up again, please. Councillor Hedditch, Councillor Farm. Thank you. All those against? Councillor David, Councillor Goodichere, Councillor Lancashire, Councillor Aziz, Councillor Borg and Councillor Papafodio. Thank you. Okay, item 15, urgent business. CEO, is there any urgent business?
No, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Item 16, confidential business. There is no confidential business today. Oops. Okay. Meeting closed. So thank you all for attending and for your interest in today's meeting. I declare this meeting closed at 2:45 p.m. I instruct the host to stop recording this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.